Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. If you're loving what you're hearing on the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, go out and tell 2 friends today. Show them how easy it is to subscribe to the show. The Real Estate Espresso Podcast is available on more than 20 different platforms, and wherever you listen to podcasts, you're sure to find the show. Go spread the love around. Why keep all this goodness to yourself? On today's show, we're bringing you an up-to-the-minute update on the major hurricane that slammed into the Gulf Coast overnight. We're talking about a major Category 4 storm called Hurricane Laura. About 500,000 people were evacuated from the low-lying coastal areas. Some people who I spoke with drove as far as Austin, Texas, 5 hours away to find a hotel room. We have several projects in southwest Louisiana, so what was happening in Lake Charles is of direct personal interest. We have staff, residents, suppliers, lawyers, and accountants in the market, and we speak with them on a daily basis. The short time available for preparing for the storm illustrated where we had weaknesses in our emergency preparedness. For example, in the future, we'll have a checklist for protecting key pieces of equipment and key documents, and when the staff closed down the office, we can only hope they took the appropriate precautions. Some things will have been done well, and others, well, who knows. We'll certainly do a lessons learned and put some process in place for emergency preparation. But the important part is that we'll carry that beyond our Lake Charles team into the other geographies. Some of those other areas also have tropical storm threats. Now, we knew there would be major power outages across the region. We took additional precautions by disconnecting the power to our buildings and powering down the water treatment plants and the sewage treatment plants. These systems will be restarted in an orderly manner when power is restored following the storm. The National Hurricane Center published a map showing the impact of the storm surge, even 30 miles inland from the coast. The forecasted model predicted widespread flooding across several hundred miles of coastline and up to 30 miles inland. And if you stayed in Lake Charles, you were going to get wet. Now that the storm has passed, we know that the major impact was from the wind, and the storm surge was much less than predicted. And overnight, we had reports of downed trees, of many broken electrical utility poles, and downed power lines. We saw many broken windows and lots of debris scattered through the streets. One of the things that makes these storms so damaging is that the wind changes direction. Once the eye of the storm passes over you, many structures have been weakened or compromised, and then the backside of the storm brings back that hurricane-force winds from the opposite direction, and that's when the real damage is happening. You have a weakened structure that can't handle being hit a second time from the other side. Whenever there's a major storm, people dig out their insurance policies and start reading the policies, if they have the full wording of the policies at all. Maybe they just call their insurance adjuster and say, help. Who knows? Most of the time, when we buy insurance, the insurance broker sends a one-page quote with a signature line at the bottom. Now, we always ask for the full policy, and we're often met with surprised reaction. That tells me that most people, when they buy insurance, they don't really know what their insurance coverage is because they haven't read their policy. Now, many policies have exclusions or limitations for named storms, and certainly Hurricane Laura would meet the definition of a named storm. Most policies have limitations on their coverage for water damage. They make a distinction between wind damage and water damage. If your building was damaged by wind and then water got into the building because of the wind damage, then you might be covered under your wind damage portion of the policy. But if the water came up from down below, either because of a storm surge or perhaps a sewer backup, then that would be covered under a different flood insurance policy, would not be covered under your storm policy. Insurers make a distinction on where the water came from when it comes to insuring that risk. You might have a building that was damaged by water that came in from above and by water that came in from below, and in that case, you might be facing a legal fight with your insurer to determine which damage is covered and which is not, and if so, by which policy. Now, so far, we don't have any specific knowledge of the condition of our own properties. We have one project currently under construction, but we're still at the foundation stage. We're pretty confident that the foundations and the underground infrastructure will have weathered the storm without too much problem. And as far as we know, all of our staff complied with the mandatory evacuation orders, and they'll be fully ready to get back to work on the cleanup in the coming days. One thing we can certainly expect whenever there's a major hurricane that makes landfall, we can expect a localized increase in price in building materials. And that can last several months as that increase in demand for building materials works its way through the system. We're already in an environment where there's been a significant run-up in lumber prices, in part due to the current construction boom, and in part because so many restaurants have been building outdoor patios in order to create outdoor spaces where people can social distance. So in the aftermath of this storm and future storms that have yet to make landfall in the United States, we can predict fairly solidly that there will be an increase in building material prices for the coming months. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.